This is the Initiates Podcast. Here, we create space to explore the path of initiation as we reawaken the forgotten wisdom that resides within us all. I am your host and guide, Natalie Grace. Join me every Thursday for an enlightening exploration of contemporary spirituality. It's my honour to journey with you. Welcome to the Initiates. I'm Natalie. It's so nice to have you with me today. On this episode, I'm going to be talking about the subject of healing thyself, of transformational healing. This is a subject that I've got a lot of first-hand experience in. It's been so important exploring this journey of healing, especially from a physical sense, having in recent years been navigating through physical illness and physical dysfunction. And I've done a lot of self-exploration as part of this healing journey. I've learned so much, not just about myself, but also about the nature of our bodies, the intelligence of our bodies, the intelligence of their systems of communication. And I really am excited to share this with you. So it's taken me a little while to put this all together because there's so much information. I'm going to do my very best to share as much as I can, as succinctly as possible today on this episode. But I know this is going to be the first in many episodes this year that talk about the process of healing, especially energetic healing, spiritual healing, and our ability as humans, as souls in human bodies, to activate and journey through our own healing. So it's a pretty big topic, but it's so important. And I think we're very well timed to do it at the very beginning of this calendar year. It's a time when a lot of people are focused on their health and their wellness, setting resolutions for themselves about healing and fitness and wellness. So I want to share what I've figured out about this with you all so that you can be informed about your ability to heal if it's not something that you've considered yourself to this point. So in this episode, I'm going to be taking you on a journey of learning about, as I said, the intelligence of the body. I'm also going to be talking about the 5-body system, and I'm going to be introducing the concept of transformational healing, which is something that I've been told in my own healing work, in conversation with my higher self and my guides and my Akashic records, that I am here to do right now. And I didn't really understand what that meant until very recently. And again, this is something that I'm excited to share. And really, it all comes down to the fact that we are the only ones who can heal ourselves. All the incredibly helpful and often not so helpful experts that exist within medical systems, allopathic or otherwise, can facilitate our healing, but they can't heal us. Only we can heal us. And I'm going to explain why that is and how coming to realize this is so incredibly empowering. Just another quick reminder about the event happening next week. It's the 2023 Future Self Envisioning Workshop. If you didn't listen to last week's episode, go check it out because I talk all about my theme for 2023 and the concept of future self envisioning. So we're going to be walking through that process together live on Zoom. It's being held on Saturday, January 21 at 5 p.m. EST. 2 p.m. PST if you're in the States. If you're in the UK, that's Saturday, January 21 at 10 p.m. GMT. And if you're in Australia, It is on Sunday, January 22, 9 a.m. Sydney time, 8 a.m. Brisbane time, and 6 a.m. Perth time. We're going to call in all that we desire for ourselves in 2023. I'm going to be guiding you through setting aligned intentions for the year, designing a manifestation vortex for yourself, and creating a detailed vision of the self that you wish to grow into in 2023. If that sounds like something you want to be a part of, it's $34 USD. Just click the link in the show notes to book your spot. Okay, let's journey. So before we begin, I just have a little disclaimer. I am obviously not a medical doctor or a medical professional. However, I'm happy to describe myself as my own doctor, and I am also a creator of medicine, energetic medicine for myself, and I make it for others as well, and ultimately I make it for the world. It's there to help raise the collective vibration by helping us each balance our own energy. So I'm speaking from my own personal experience here, so please don't take this as professional medical advice, but take it however you wish to take it. I also want to say that my experience comes from my own personal journey through various illnesses and my journey to health basically over my life up to this point. So I'm here to share my learnings with you. So it's my personal belief, well-informed belief, that the body is the most intelligent technology, most intelligent machine to ever exist. And this goes for all bodies, not just human ones, but I speak from my experience in a human body here. So I see the body as a form of extremely advanced technology. I see the body as hyper intelligent because it can function on its own to support our spiritual experience here in this material realm. It knows it has been given the most sacred job in the 3D world, and that is to act as the vessel for our spirits. Our bodies house our souls and our spirits. They allow us to be here, to hold the vibration just so that we can be physical and explore this material existence. And so there's so many examples of this intelligence in just our day-to-day waking and dreaming life, actually. Our bodies support us through both of those things. So some examples are breathing, blood pumping, the body's ability to metabolize food to energy, to filter nutrients and excrete waste. These are hyper sophisticated systems. The electrical system is another example of this that exists in all living things. So, but especially breathing and the pumping of blood are things that happen without our conscious attention. And this just is the most obvious example of the intelligence of our physical bodies. So from my perspective, there is no greater machine, and there's probably not going to be a more advanced or intelligent form of technology than our bodies. We, as a collective, as a species, are constantly trying to create something better than our bodies, and we haven't done it yet. And I think that's because our bodies, one, have that incredibly sacred job, but two, hold spirit. And so we're never going to match the intelligence or the technology of our bodies in an external, in a synthetic machine, unless it holds spirit. And maybe that's the ultimate goal of transferring consciousness to inanimate machines or computers, is so that they can hold spirit and we can see what's possible when another advanced technological system can have a consciousness. But I still don't think that it's going to match the human body. it is really hard to imagine that we could replicate the level of sophistication in our own body tech. It's not to say that I don't believe there are powers that be that are trying their hardest to do this, that believe that it's possible. Some examples of these endeavors are cloning, fake meat, for instance, weather manipulation. So it's not just about replicating the natural intelligent functions of our physical bodies, but it's also about nature in general, and our nature, say, to eat meat, our nature to exist in a world that has weather, all those things. The observation of the natural world and how it works and its innate intelligence is what I believe like science is. That's definitely what alchemy is. The endeavor to understand at the deepest possible level the true intelligence of nature, and to find ways to replicate it, not to better it, but to embody this wisdom, this natural wisdom, to almost in an act of devotion to understand how it works so that we can understand ourselves, because as without, so within, right? It's a spiritual endeavor. If you are an alchemist, by going through this process, you are making connection with source, with the creator. You are having that divine connection. So in my most honest belief, I think it's almost impossible to replicate or better the technology of the human body as a mere human. I don't think the smartest machine could do it either, because the body contains spirit, and that's what makes our intelligence superior to that of machine. And I believe that also goes for whales, for cows, for cats, for dogs, for bats, for grasshoppers, for fish, for even blades of grass, for trees, for mushrooms, all living things. All living beings, their spirits are contained by these hyper-intelligent bodies. And interestingly, at this point, I just want to add in that I really do believe this is why there is the psyop of ET intelligence that exists. I'm not suggesting that there's no such thing as extraterrestrials. I'm not suggesting that they are not intelligent. I'm not even suggesting that they're not more intelligent than us. They could definitely be more intelligent. And being extraterrestrial to me is ultra-dimensional, I guess. It's very possible that if you're a being from a higher dimension, you hold a higher form of intelligence than we do here, and that's totally okay. However, I think what we're told and what we're taught and what we're kind of like guided into experience when it comes to ET intelligence is a psyop, and it's a constructed narrative, and it's ultimately a distraction, because it makes many of us believe, who have open minds to this stuff, that we need to look to the sky to spot the high forms of technology, that we need to look to the sky to spot the highest forms of technology, that they're telling us that there's these things called spaceships that carry aliens through the sky, through space to our planet, and that the spaceships are the highest forms of technology. And the psyop is that there's this like narratives around hidden agendas and secret space programs where the military intelligence knows how to make these spaceships that hold this superior advanced technology. But our bodies are the spaceships. Like, what a distraction, right? Our bodies are the spaceships. They hold our spirit. They've been able to take our higher dimensional form and anchor it in a way into this three-dimensional dense reality. They are vessels for our spirits to travel in this world. The spaceship is a symbol. It's like a parable, the alien in the spaceship that comes to teach us about our intelligence. How about we look at our own intelligence that we travel in every moment of our lives, our physical bodies? Now, just so you don't get confused, I believe in aliens. I believe in high dimensional beings. Do I believe they travel here in spaceships? Maybe sometimes. Do I think they travel through space on their way here? Maybe not. Do I think that there's a much more technologically advanced way to travel interdimensionally? Absolutely. Is that technology a higher form or more advanced form of technology than our physical human bodies? Perhaps, but maybe not. Probably not. That's my thinking at the moment. I think it's important to note here as well that I actually don't think intelligence is a linear scale from 0 to infinity. There's, for me, no such thing as not intelligent to most intelligent. I think intelligence is held within every natural, living, and even non-living, even inanimate objects hold a form of intelligence. So every natural living thing is evidence of our collective advanced intelligence. Because we share reality in this realm, we exist in a symbiotic relationship with the tree, for instance. I'm sitting now looking out the window and I can see a beautiful forest of trees in front of me that exists next to the farm where I live. And they feed me air. My lungs process it without me thinking, and then I give what they need back to them. That is the most advanced technology that we could even consider, right? And we just take it for granted, and we think that these aliens on spaceships, the spaceships hold the highest form of technology, right? And the technology that they create must be more intelligent than ours. And sure, our computers probably aren't as advanced as high-dimensional computing systems, but are they more advanced than our human bodies as machines, as technology? I'm not sure about that. These machines are so advanced. And so we each are all evidence, physical evidence of the highest form of intelligence from my perspective. Our creativity is evidence of the highest intelligence of our spirit. But the physical body is the physical, tangible evidence of the intelligence of our creator, which is partly us. We are co-creators of our bodies. So on the one hand, you might say, well, no, Source created our bodies or Gaia created our physical bodies. There's a higher, more spiritual being that was in charge of creating our bodies. And that's probably true. But I believe we are all created in the image of the Creator, that we each are a fragment of the divine experiencing this material realm. Therefore, we are partly the Creator, each and every one of us. We are holders of Source, the energy of Source. Therefore, we are co-creators of our bodies. We're co-creators of our physical realities. We're co-creators of these physical vessels that have been designed to house and carry our spirits in this world. We are the authors of our incarnation here. And therefore, our health, our physicality, our physical reality within our bodies, our lived experience is a creation, our creation. And this includes our health. This includes illness. This includes disease. This even includes birth and death. All the things that are associated with physically living in our bodies. So I've gone on this little tangent because it's so important for us to acknowledge that we collectively have forgotten about the intelligence of our bodies. And I'm going to keep saying that phrase, the intelligence of our bodies, because that repetition is so important for our reprogramming. Because we have been programmed to deny the intelligence of our bodies. Our mothers and fathers are programmed not to trust their own intuition about the bodies of their children. We're connected to our parents, especially our mothers when we are young, almost to the point of physicality even after leaving the womb. And so this is incredibly important visceral programming that we receive. Sometimes we get glimpses of intuition from our parents about what they think might be wrong with us. But usually there's an intervention that takes place. We're given painkillers to control our fevers. We are given medication when our glands flare up. Sometimes our parents do honor their intuition. I remember when I was younger, I would, as many of us as children did, I experienced growing pains in my legs. It was so painful. And my parents always knew that the correct medicine. The only medicine that would help was the rubbing of the legs, that touch from the parent. Incredibly healing transfer of energy. So then we are programmed from the youngest age not to trust our own bodies. From the youngest age, we're fed pharmaceuticals to mask symptoms of what we call illness. But what I'm coming to understand is that illness is actually evidence of our body working as it should and responding as it's divinely designed, executing on its intelligent design. So often as children, we're taught not to cry when we are experiencing physical pain, for instance, and that teaches us to repress and suppress natural urges. There's so many examples that I could go into, but I'm going to progress to what happens when we're teens. We're taught as teens that everything we experience will grow out of, things like acne and phases of being chubby and ugly and all those things. It's so much to do with our physicality, our physical identity when we're teens. We're just taught that we'll grow out of stuff. It's kind of like we're taught not to honor the present moment. We can't wait to grow up into adults rather than sitting with the present moment and understanding what it means to go through this incredible physical initiation from child into adult. We're taught as young adults to alter our natural hormone function with synthetic medications. We're given hormones, say the pill for women, for instance, to deal with all manner of issues. We're completely playing with our hormone system in a really dangerous way because it's convenient. So as young adults, we're taught to take medication for convenience. And it's such a good one they give us because it's apparently safe, we trust them. So we're also conditioned to trust the doctors more than we trust ourselves and to kind of outsource our responsibility to the medical profession. I know that's a really big initiation for young women. The first time we go to the doctors on our own is often to talk about our sexual health or our sexuality, to get the pill. And we're not told of the risks. Perhaps this has changed nowadays, but when I went, there were no risks discussed. There were no side effects discussed. There were no long-term effects discussed. So we're taught just to trust for the convenience and to outsource the responsibility of understanding what we're taking to the medical system because, of course, they would have our best interest at heart. But really, what they're doing is teaching us that health is convenience and that our bodies are something we must manage in a convenient way. As we go through our young adult life, we're taught to hate our bodies. This is starting at a younger and younger and younger age nowadays. We're taught to hate our bodies for not being the perfect shape or size or weight or tone or color, rather than revere them as sacred vessels that carry our souls. As hyper-intelligent advanced technology, it's a miracle that we exist in these bodies. It might sound twee, but it's true. We are taught as mothers to surrender our authority to the medical system, to be scared, to be distrusting of ourselves, to trust the doctor above our own judgment at all costs. And then that goes on postnatally as well through the system of the pediatric health. We're taught as people transitioning through great change and illness, whether it's life stresses that are triggering, say, a midlife crisis, or the body's alchemical transformative stages, such as moving into menopause. We're taught to detest that natural process. We're taught as we age to mourn our lost youth instead of stepping into the power of our wisdom as we age. We're taught to fear illness and to surrender our autonomy and ability to self-heal to the medical profession, who don't know us. They don't know who we are. They don't know what we go through. They don't know what we've gone through that has led us to this point in our health. They don't have the time to care about that part. And it's not built into the allopathic Western medical system. And probably most importantly, we're taught to fear death and to avoid it at all costs. So that goes from, firstly, not accepting death when it's imminent, ignoring the fact of life that we all die at some point and that could be at any time. And then to avoid it, which then flows on to avoiding aging, because aging is a reminder of the nearing of death. We avoid it at all costs. So these are some really big programs, and this isn't the entirety of it. And it starts when we are born, when we go through that portal, even when we're in the womb of our mothers, to when we die. And once we reflect on what we're taught about our bodies, it becomes clear that we've become completely detached from our own intelligence. And for me, this is what embodiment is all about. It's coming back to the intelligence of the body, allowing it to hold you and carry you as you transform into your higher self. So coming back to the intelligence of the body, to remember the intelligence of the body, to revere the intelligence of the body. Let's be clear, there's truly no greater machine than the body. It performs the most incredible functions and the most incredibly complex functions with ease, and not just ease, but autonomously manages these and performs these functions with ease. As I said before, breathing, the blood, digestion. I didn't reflect on this, but wow, what about the function of conception and pregnancy? There are many stories of people who have been pregnant and haven't even known until the moment of giving birth. The body did that autonomously without them directing their attention to that process. It is the most natural process, and the body is designed intelligently to manage it all autonomously. Definitely better when we have an awareness, a conscious awareness, but here's the thing, we don't need to have the conscious awareness for the body to manage that for us. Our bodies are also incredible alchemists. One of the ways we can recognize this is to think about how the body manages water. It alchemizes water held in our bodies into various forms for different purposes. There's blood, there's tears, there's mucus, there's urine, there's saliva, there's plasma, there's so many substances, fluid substances that are alchemized by the body. And so they're just some examples of what the body is capable of doing completely on its own. But when we set our mind to something, the capability of the body advances even further in the most phenomenal way. So if we think about the example of going into training, we can train ourselves to become fitter, to travel longer distances by foot. Say someone who's practicing running, for instance, they're becoming more fit with each run or each jog they do. They're able to travel a tiny bit further when they track their distance. They start to monitor their breathing and their oxygen levels in their blood, and they start increasing, and breathing becomes easier and their blood starts carrying more oxygen and their organs start pumping more effectively. They're using the oxygen more efficiently in the body. You're becoming stronger and you're able to carry greater weight without breaking or hurting. So that's a good example, say, if you're taking up lifting weights. So we've all had the experience of doing something like this, setting the intention that I want to be fitter, or I want to lose some weight, or I want to set a goal for myself and see if I can achieve it. So it could be taking up running, or it could be lifting weights, or it could be doing yoga or Pilates, where we're trying to increase our flexibility and achieve new feats of movement. And in these examples, we're setting our intention, setting our mind on our goal, and we're actively co-creating this physical transformation between our bodies and the world we live in. This is alchemy. This is alchemy in action. So we can clearly understand what the technology of the body is capable of on its own. And we know how we can co-create the advancement of this tech, this body tech, when we consciously, intentionally work with it. We can train it to become even more intelligent. We can work with it, tinker with it to become more advanced. And if we accept that, then we must accept that if we set our mind to living in a state of health, then this must also be possible. If we know that we can set our intentions to become more fit and we do the work, we put in the activity and we do the work on a consistent basis, we get fitter. It's just fact. And why is this different when it comes to our health? Our deepest selves know this to be true, that we have the power to create our own health. This is why it has taken lifetimes of programming from the day we're born to the day we die to get us to forget our own power as creators of our health, as our own healers. We can heal ourselves and we have all the evidence we need. And why is this? We know how our bodies have been created. We know what they're capable of because we created them. And we also know what they can be challenged by from a health perspective. Therefore, we know how to heal. Our bodies are completely unique to us in our present incarnations. No one knows what it is to live in our bodies except for us. No one else receives the messages that our bodies send. Only we receive those messages. And I'm going to talk more about those messages in a bit. Therefore, we are our own healers. We each hold the keys to our own health, our healthy selves. We hold the keys to heal thyself. And I believe it's time we remember this. It's time that we reawaken the forgotten intelligence of self-healing. So it's my belief, after journeying through illness, different forms of illness in my life that have required surgery, that have prompted facing my own mortality, it's my belief that illness is the body's method of communication. I believe the body talks to us through physical symptoms. And that this is a language that's actually quite easy to understand, and that we do inherently understand this language. I guess it's symbolic. We've just lost trust in our ability to interpret this language because we've been programmed to, I don't even think forget it, to just distrust our own interpretation power. So much of this language that the body speaks to us through is actually symbolic. So if we think of the skin, the heart, the gut, we have sayings about having thick skin, feeling heartbroken or having a broken heart, trusting our gut, having a lump in your throat, feeling hot and bothered, feeling chilled to the bone. All of these things, feeling sick to your stomach, these phrases are real. They reflect our reality of how our bodies, our intelligent bodies, send us messages, communicate with us. We clearly understand this communication because we've encoded our language with this, yet we've forgotten how to react to these messages when they actually happen in our bodies. One of the things that inspired me to talk about this right now is my own journey through managing illness and health. And skin is a really great one to talk about. I'm thinking about my skin at the moment because for maybe 2 years now, I've been experiencing adult acne, and it's not all over my face. It's not like what I experienced when I was a teen, when I suffered from that pretty badly. It's different. It's just a few pimples constantly on my face, and I've altered my skincare a lot. I also was suffering from dermatitis rashes under my eyes and around my nostrils for a good year and a half, I'd say. I've worked holistically with that problem and really tried to intuit the source of it, and also the physical irritation that was making it present on my skin. And I've actually cleared that now. The doctors couldn't help me. My GP admitted that if I went to a dermatologist, they're just going to give me something to put on top that's probably going to irritate it further. So I went through a process of simplifying, say, my skincare routine to first take out any scents. Everything I use is natural, but even essential oils are very powerful and volatile. and can trigger dysfunction in the skin. So I removed everything and went back to absolute basics, and also thought about what is it that might be prompting this. And I'm going to talk about my thyroid symptoms in a little while, but emotional dysfunction is one of those, the inability to regulate emotions. And I was crying a lot. And, you know, what happens when you cry? You've got water coming down your face from your eyes and mucus coming out of your nose. And those were the places that were having this raw sensitivity. And I had to deal with that on a deep level, on an emotional level, on a mental level, and even on a spiritual level. So I'm glad to say that I've cleared that problem, but the acne is still hanging around, and it's something that I am working through from my own transformational healing perspective now. So I'm going to talk through my thinking process in dealing with this issue. So acne is something for me that I experienced when I was a teenager, say from around 12 to around 14 or so, 15. It was cystic and really bad at that time. It affected my sense of self-love, I think. It obviously makes it really hard to look at yourself in a mirror when you have acne that's bad, and people always comment on it, so it makes you feel unattractive. So I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that feeling as a teen of having to journey through having acne and having these volcanic eruptions on the skin that are just completely unavoidable. You can't not look at them. When you look at someone's face, when you look them in the eye, you can see it. So it's deeply affecting at an emotional level. So I think of that. I think of my experience as a teen, and then I'm experiencing this now for the past couple of years. And I'm starting to pick up on a theme. What happens when a woman is in her pubescent age, and what happens when a woman hits her 40s? It's a major transition of self. It is transitioning through a stage of maturity. It's actually both of these times in life are times of initiation. As the teen, you're advancing from child to maiden, if you're a girl, you know, from child to adult. It's a huge transition, absolutely huge transition. I believe it is an initiation. That is why so many initiation rites in cultures happen at that age. And then at this age, well, this is a time typically, although I'm not a mother of children, that a woman shifts from starts to transition from mother to crone. Now, I don't want to say that I'm embodying the wisdom of the crone just yet, but I am definitely deeply aware that that transition has started for me. It's beginning. And so there's a pattern that I'm seeing, that at these times in life, especially for a woman, you're going through a major transition of self-maturity. And it's a spiritual transition, deeply spiritual. And so let's talk about the nature of acne then. So acne is something that resides within, that pushes up to the surface to be realized, to be seen, to be reckoned with. It is pressurized and eruptive. It acts like a volcano when there's so much pressure underneath. It travels up. This pressure travels up through the layers of skin like the Earth's crust. And eventually at some point when the pressure becomes too much, the skin, the Earth's crust can't contain that fiery energy, and it erupts and spills over. The nature of acne is also that it's unsightly. It's nothing that you don't want to see on your face and you don't want others to see. It can be painful. Thankfully, it's not painful at the moment, but when it really kicked off about a year or so ago, it was cystic on my chin, and I forgot how painful acne is, and our poor teen selves that had to go through that. The adults at that time probably forgot as well. It hurts. It hurts to have all this stuff pushing up from within wanting to be seen. And it's common when you suffer from acne, or you're dealing with acne or experiencing acne, you can develop a compulsion to touch or to squeeze or to pick your pimples or bumps. So I've been sitting with this because I'm not easily grossed out, and I've watched a lot of Dr. Pimple Popper, right? I don't know if you guys have watched some of that show too. And it's a common thing that Dr. Pimple Popper recognizes in her patients, she can tell whether a scar or a mark left from a sore or a pimple or a cyst or a bump is natural, or there's been some intervention, that there has been a squeezing or picking or scratching. She can tell very easily because the naturally appearing bump with no intervention is completely round. That's what she says. Whereas when there's it's in a regular shape, not completely round, there's been human intervention. So the person who has this bump has had the compulsion to touch it and intervene with it in some way. I think about, why is that? Because I have that compulsion. I've always had that compulsion. And my logic behind it, that I came to pretty early on, that I still held until recently, was, I don't think it's right that toxicity stays in the body, so I'm going to help it by squeezing it out in as gentle way possible as I can. Because I actually did work as a skin specialist at the biggest, fanciest Australian beauty retailer. In my 20s, I learned so much about skin and skincare and beauty. So it informs my understanding. And I know that you're not supposed to pick, because it can put different new bacteria into any wound or opening, and it can also create scars. So I already know this on one hand, logically, but on the other, it doesn't make sense to just leave a pimple there, a blind pimple, that isn't going to burst, and that gunk is going to stay under the skin when it really wants to come out. So that was my logic. So there can be a reason you pick is to help the toxicity leave more quickly, or at least that's how you feel you're helping. It can be a method of distracting from the natural process, because you don't want to just let the natural process happen. It's too painful to see it evolve in its own time, in divine timing. It can be because your inner self desires you to notice and deal with what wishes to be seen, but you don't know how. So your deepest inner knowing is that something's coming up from within, and it needs to be seen. It needs to be dealt with. It needs to be healed. But it's so painful and ugly to see it that you don't want to do that. And you don't know how to honor that desire to see what wishes to be seen. So instead you're kind of prodding and squeezing and picking and poking. Or you could just be trying to comfort yourself. I think a lot of people who have other kinds of sores that I've seen, say on Dr. Pimple Popper, where they're scratching and scratching and scratching, often they've experienced some kind of trauma, and the trauma is coming up to be seen, and they are desperately trying to comfort themselves by saying, I see you, extending that touch, I see you, but not really getting the message that the body's trying to send. And you have to accept that if you interfere too much, you can leave scars. So if you interact, if you scratch, if you pick, and you're not doing this in a way that honors the toxicity that's coming out to be seen, you can leave visible memories of the trauma of that eruption. So it's another layer of potential trauma that's held within the skin. So there's lots to unpack here, right? If you just think about what is the nature of this pimple or acne, what are the correspondences? What does it symbolize? There's so much wisdom to be learned, and it's stuff to consider. The answer is going to be different for every one of us, but it's now up to us. Well, you can go to the doctor and they can be, well, like, here's the constructed answer that applies to every single person, and here's the medicine that we prescribe to every person that presents with this problem. But it's my belief that every single cause is different, and therefore every experience of an illness or a dysfunction or a disharmony presenting is going to be unique to that person as well. So the solution therefore has to be different. So in the case of acne and my acne, for me, it's clear when I think about those things, I consider the symbolic meanings of the reality of what's happening. It's clear that something within is really pushing to reach the light. It's wanting to move from within my inner world, the inner body, to to the outer world, to the outer layer of my body and see the light. And I think that is really a kind of physical, perhaps potentially a physical manifestation of the process of shadow work, going into the deeper inner layers of self and beyond the skin, deeper than the skin, going into those deep, deep layers of self to pull out those areas we define as perhaps toxic or infected, It can be the body's natural process potentially of alchemizing buried toxicity at the shallower level of the skin so that it can see the light. It can receive light. It's something that's hidden, that's repressed, that's desperate to reach the light, to be exposed, to be seen in its ugliness. Your body reacting this way is sending you a message. That's what I feel anyway. So when I look at my skin, I'm looking at my face every day, multiple times a day. Whenever I wash my hands, there's a mirror at the basin. I will see my face. I will see my pimple probably. Each time that happens, I will see the transmission from my spirit through my physical body. I will receive a message. Whether I hear it and interpret it and understand it is different, but I'll see it. I'll receive it. So there's something within me at those more superficial layers that wants to be seen, to be dealt with, to be healed. And I haven't figured out, to be brutally honest with you, I haven't figured out what that is yet. I have worked with the acne on my chin, which has pretty much gone away, that a lot of the time represents issues in the gut. So that's cleared. So I guess something to do with the gut and what the gut symbolizes and how the gut functions has balanced in some way so that there's perhaps it's purged what it's needed to purge, and I have responded and received the message, and that doesn't need to happen as frequently or as intensely as it was. There might just be one pimple now instead of like a whole chin of acne, of painful acne. And so what I'm trying to say is, yes, it's really important. Like what you eat is important, and the physical health of your body and how it functions is important. Your hygiene, of course, is important too. But it's not just about those things, because there's people that have poor hygiene that don't suffer from pimples or acne. It's has to do with something more than that. So it's also so much more about your emotional and mental and spiritual self, and also the etheric layer of self too. So that's just one really basic and small example of how I journey through my health issues nowadays. I haven't discovered all the answers yet. To be honest, I haven't even asked the Akashic Records about the acne issue with me. So that's something that I really should do. And if I do that and I get an answer, I'll share it with you guys in a future episode. There might be some additional higher insight to be shared there that helps me understand my personal physical problem more deeply. But the reason I've gone into depth about my process of trying to explore my own health issue, my own physical issue, is because such an important part of embodiment is actively listening to your body. It is listening with intention, considering, receiving, thinking, exploring, problem solving, troubleshooting, experimenting. It is intentional action, doing something with these messages and trusting yourself to be able to interpret them. And it is absolutely transformational healing, which is what I've come to call this process, is an experimental process because each one of us is different. And the more time and effort and intention we devote to actively listening to the messages that our bodies send us, the more we will trust our ability to interpret these messages, and the more wisdom we will unlock about our physical bodies and our health. And embodiment can mean lots of things, but this is just an example of what it is to live in an embodied way. when we're talking about physical health, living in a body, it's engaging in a two-way conversation with your body. And I want to say as well, affirmations are great, but it's not just affirmations. That's one part. Doing that mental transformation and reprogramming is super important. I am fit, I'm healthy. If I'm looking at the acne and my initial response is to be like, oh, that's ugly, that's gross, to be telling myself I'm beautiful anyway, even with a pimple, it's okay. Affirmations are great, but it's not just affirmations, because that's still our mental selves trying to overcome what is a multi-layered energetic issue. We have to actually intentionally listen and then do the work to understand what the messages mean, to translate the messages, to interpret the messages, to then understand the messages and take action on the messages. What is it that your body is trying to help you understand? And it's my belief that every single physical message that your body sends you all comes back to the deepest layer of self, which in an energetic body perspective is the spiritual body. So what's your body trying to show you? Troubleshoot this with your body. Make it an activity you do together. It's not just mental, and it's not just outsourcing it to the medical profession. Do that with your doctor. I'm not saying, I want to be really clear about this. I'm not saying that there is no role for doctors or medical professionals or hospitals or complementary medicine in managing our health. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is they don't know your body as well as you do, and they can't understand the messages that your body is sending you. Only you can. They can have opinions on it. They can suggest things. They can use their experience in working with other people with this issue and how they resolved it. They can share with you the academic perspectives that they have learned from the science, from the scientific perspective. But they can only facilitate your healing. They can't heal you. Only you can heal yourself, and a good doctor will facilitate your healing. But not all doctors are good doctors, and not all of them care about your healing. It's really important to state that. So I see a hugely important role in our very advanced system of allopathic medicine. I also see a really important role in more traditional forms of medicine like Ayurveda and like traditional Chinese medicine and other cultural forms of health management and medicine as well. They are not the only systems. There are so many systems. Wise woman medicine is also a system of medicine, and it is unique to particular ancestral lines. It's unique to particular locations in the world. It's unique to particular cultures and cultural groups, subcultural groups even. There's a place for all of these systems of medicine, of healing. The power comes in for you to know that you are responsible for healing yourself, and you can go and consult with any number of these external systems, but they can't heal you. They can help you heal. They can facilitate your healing if they're doing their job properly, but they can't heal you. So on your own or with your doctor, whoever else you like to consult with, troubleshoot with your body. Make your body part of the process, an intelligent part of the process. Like the body is its own entity, because it is. Problem solve with your body. Tweak your diet, tweak your lifestyle, analyze your emotional health, reprogram your thinking. But most importantly, explore the deep dive into the mental, emotional, spiritual layers of your health. Because what the allopathic system does not teach us is to go to the source of the illness, because that's where the healing occurs. Treating the symptom doesn't equal healing. Sometimes it does if that symptom is the main factor, I guess, and the treatment does deal with healing the source, but most often than not, in my experience, it doesn't. It might be a surgical removal, but the source of where the issue comes from is still not dealt with. And that can create new layers of trauma when people are telling you you're all good, but you still have this issue at a deeper layer or a deeper level. And now, not just that, but you're also experience loss of an organ, for instance, or loss of a bone or something like that. So this is a pretty long episode, actually. Depending on how long it is, I might split it in two, but maybe I'll just run with it because I feel like it's such a good primer for the content that's to come, where we are exploring modes of healing in support of our personal transformational healing. So I've been talking about these different layers of body or different energy bodies. These are called the 5 bodies or 5 koshas, okay, in the Vedic system. The physical body is only one of our bodies. The physical body is the densest body. It's the tangible material body that we carry ourselves in. However, it's not the only body. So there's the physical body, there's the etheric body, there's the mental body, there's the emotional body, and there's the spiritual body. And if you think about the aura, you may have seen these in a diagram before where you see lines around the body. It's usually standing up and there'll be a line. There's obviously the container of the body, which is the physical body. And then you might see a softer line around that, which might be the aura. But if you think about extending that out into 5 layers, the first is the physical body. The next layer is the etheric body. Then the next layer after that's the mental body. And then the next layer after that is the emotional body. And then the final layer after that, although some systems do believe in more, there being a greater number than 5, but let's keep it simple. The 5th layer is the spiritual. And this is in this system the outermost layer. These bodies are energetic, even the physical. The physical body holds a vibration that is vibrating our matter at a rate that it can be physical, that it can materialize with density in a physical way. But it's still energetic. So the rest of them are perhaps we're more familiar with them being energetic because we can't see them. So let's talk about these 5 bodies. So the physical is the body we know. When we talk about the body, this is generally the body we're talking about. It's our material body, our meat suit, as people like to describe it. It's the body that allopathic and Western medicine exclusively most of the time focuses on. The next layer of energetic body is the etheric body. So this one represents lots of things, but I'm just going to focus on one really important role of the etheric body. This is the body that holds our health blueprint. It's possible to alter this blueprint, but it takes reprogramming at a mental and emotional layer. And if you are familiar with soul contracts, I've talked about one perspective of soul contracts in an earlier episode, which is about contracts we have with others before we come here. We make those contracts in the other realm when we're spirits. We also make contracts for ourselves on what we wish to experience when we're here in the world. And so if we think about the etheric body as holding kind of like our health blueprint contract, it basically contains like all that is possible within our physical bodies, including the levels of health we can realize and actualize, and the challenges of illness and disease that we could potentially experience. We each design this in the other realm before we come here in order to support our karmic lessons and our soul's path of evolution. So each person is going to have a different potential experience when it comes to all the things that they could experience health-wise in their body. This blueprint is held in this etheric layer. So while we're born with it, having an awareness that this layer exists is really empowering, because it means that while it might hold potential for you to experience certain diseases, it also holds the potential for your most maximum actualization of health. And you can anchor into that one too. I have been taught by people who have taught me about this system that it is possible to reprogram your etheric blueprint. And I guess that is done through reprogramming at a mental level. It's all about your beliefs and what you believe is possible. I think there's probably also a lot of emotional work that goes into that as well. I'm not an expert in this, so I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but I'm sure part of what I'm talking about in this episode does influence potentially the ability to reprogram your health blueprint that's held in the etheric body. Then you've got the mental energy body. So this is the energetic field that contains not just all of our thoughts, but our intellect, our perceptions of reality. It's where the programming and reprogramming happens. And the mental body uses the physical body as a tool for creation and manifestation. So this is the interaction between, there is an interaction between all of these bodies, but that's the specific interaction, or one of the specific interactions between the mental and the physical body. The mental energy body, this energetic field, is also where I think we are most easily manipulated, and that the power structures, whatever you wish to call them, understand ways to interfere and influence our mental energy body that then interacts with our full energy body system. After that comes the emotional energy body. This is the energy body that feels and experiences. It feels the spectrum of emotion, and it uses the physical body to alchemize the emotional experience while we feel physical sensations of emotions. So they have a really important connection, the physical and the emotional body, because we understand what we're feeling by the way our body responds to the feeling. When we cry, it's one way to understand how sad we are, to feel that water alchemizing from inside our bodies coming out, warming our face as the tears drip down our cheeks. Obviously, we can also understand what stress feels like when our hearts start to race and we start sweating, for instance, if we're in a state of extreme stress. There's two examples of the interaction between those bodies. And then the outermost body is the spiritual, but this is also your core self, because the spiritual, if you think about, say, nesting dolls, the outermost nesting doll holds all of the other nesting dolls. Therefore, the spiritual body is also experiencing the emotional body and the mental body and the etheric body, right? They all kind of hold one another, but especially the spiritual. While it's the body that extends the furthest out from us, it has the ability to touch many people who are further away. It's also our core self. So it extends out from the deepest core of ourselves. And it's my true belief that this is where health and illness begins, in this spiritual layer. And then the vibration that's held in this layer of health or illness, whatever state you might be in any particular moment, the vibration travels through the rest of the energetic bodies or fields until it gets to the physical. So I feel like the physical is the last and slowest body, but it's also where the messages are the most clear, because if we're not attuned to our spiritual energetic field, and we're not receiving the messages that way, and then we're not really in touch with our emotions, we're not really, sitting with our emotions and honoring our emotions and understanding what our emotions are trying to tell us, and then we're so bogged down with mental programming that we don't even know how to perceive what's going on from an emotional and spiritual perspective, then that gets filtered through the etheric. That then the etheric is saying, well, okay, you've got this spiritual issue. It's tried to talk to you through your emotions. It's tried to talk to you through your thoughts. You're not hearing it. I'm going to have to look in your blueprint to see how I can send you this message so that you can understand and hear it. And then this is where the health issue manifests physically in the body. It's like the final communication tool. It's the most drastic that the body uses to communicate with us, that the spirit uses to communicate with us perhaps. It has the greatest impact, because when you go through a health crisis, it really can just stop your life in its tracks, and you are forced to focus all your attention on the path of healing. And if you do that path of healing, honor, you are healing at all of those levels. That is the healing. If you're only focusing on the physical, you can't be sure that whatever you're suffering from won't come back or get worse. And that's why so many people talk about medication, pharmaceuticals being band-aids, because they work with the physical. They probably also work with the mental a lot. They do have an impact on the emotions, but they never, ever touch the spiritual energy body, which is the source. That always starts there. It's my belief it always starts there. So to recap, if you have a spiritual dysfunction of any kind, and this I think is generally if you are off your path, if you are so far out of alignment and you have no idea, or you're feeling so lost and you don't know how to come back to center and like realize your full potential as this amazing divine being in this incarnation, your spirit has to interact. And if it can't get to you through other means, it will send you a physical issue. So if you have a spiritual dysfunction, it will first express emotionally, then mentally, then process through the ethereal to express in the physical through the material symptoms. And now I speak from experience here. My most obvious experience of this processing of an issue at the spiritual core was my thyroid dysfunction, or is my thyroid dysfunction. And this has really triggered so much healing for me. It has really cracked me open to my spiritual health. It has awakened me. It's been a catalyst for awakening. I think I was always on the path to awaken at some point, and I missed all the signals until I got sick physically from this thyroid disease. And when that happened and I realized what was happening, this disease in particular, any thyroid dysfunction, is especially spiritual. It is so tied to the chakra system, to the throat chakra. It is so tied to repression of authentic self that it's just such a, I want to say it's beyond shame. It's a disaster that we don't deal with this in allopathic medicine in this way, because I don't believe you can heal from thyroid illness unless you're dealing with the spiritual core of the disease, because it's such a spiritual disease, honestly. From my experience, I know this. So I've experienced and explored this illness and healing from this illness at all levels. And so I have a deeper understanding for myself where it stemmed from and how it manifested in me and why. And I also, it's also taught me so much about the healing journey and what transformational healing is, because healing never ends. Healing is a constant from the moment we are born to the moment we die. There's something that's always there that can be healed within ourselves. And if we've done all the healing on ourselves, we can heal past life selves. We can heal our child selves. We can heal the collective. We can heal our ancestral lines. So healing never ends. There's always an opportunity to heal. And so that's the first lesson, because this is a dysfunctional disease that needs to be managed over the long term. Many people live with it as soon as they get diagnosed for the rest of their lives, and the impact of it for the rest of their lives. And it's a spiritual state of being that needs to be managed in addition to that physical. And this disease really affects every single energy body in such a deep, profound way. So I'm going to talk through my experience. So let's talk about where it started on that spiritual level, which I understand now. So on a spiritual level, I was lost and on the wrong path in my life. I was heading further out of alignment. Things that at the beginning of my 30s were really fun, explorative, and I think were honoring a lot of the Sagittarius energy in my chart, a lot of the Jupiter energy in my chart, if we're talking astrology, came to life in my early 30s. And it was completely carefree living. I did not care about consequences to things. I just lived in the moment, and there was so much joy I experienced, but I understand I put my body through torture at that time. I was drinking a lot. I wasn't resting. I had a real problem with sleeping at that time. So I wasn't really honoring my body. I was honoring like the spirit of exploration and this expansive phase of that time in my life. But it had led me to seeing that way of life as normal, and it wasn't. It's just not a way of life you can sustain for a long time, for a long period, partying all the time, you know, as you're getting older, and then working as well, because I was getting in the beginning a lot of fulfillment and stimulation out of my career. I was finding it really exciting to work in technology and making digital products, making apps, you know, and the industry was really glamorous at that time. You know, there were open bars almost every second night. I was able to travel with my job. It was really cool. And I kind of got addicted to that lifestyle and seeing that as normal, and it wasn't. And it led me down the wrong path. So my career started to lack meaning, but I was still working myself to the grind and then partying in my free time. I was also ignoring my gifts and my talents, and I wasn't really being creative. I started out really social in this career, but by the time it was very clear I had to transition out of it, I wasn't able to socialize at work any longer. If you can hear that, there's some beautiful black cockatoos flying over the room I'm in right now. A wonderful bird. They look like dinosaurs. I'll pop a photo in the show notes. We're really lucky on our farm. They come to visit us every day and drink from the water troughs here, and they're just spectacular creatures. Their bodies are amazing. Okay, so back to my journey. I was talking about being super social at that time, but by the end of this career, I was masking myself. I had completely lost touch with who I was, and I didn't want anyone that I worked with to know who I was either. I guess because I didn't know who I was anymore. And so I got to the point where not only was I bored and my work was lacking meaning, I was also completely burnt out energetically. I'd given too much and it was just draining me. I quit my job, and at that point, this was before COVID, I had this premonition that something was coming and that I needed to leave the city. So we moved, and we moved to a farm, which was beautiful for me, except the transition was enormous, and it was all divinely planned to trigger a dark night of the soul for me, which I've gone through in detail in previous episodes. If you want to hear more about that, about my dark night and the alchemy of transformation and the shadow work that was required in that time. But I'm going to talk about the physical health perspective of that time. So just before COVID, moved to a farm, way over my head with what we took on. I'd never worked the land before at all. It was such hard work, and I had no idea that I was suffering from thyroid dysfunction at that time. My symptoms hadn't become so obvious yet. So in my home life, I was going through a physical transition of moving place, but there was also some relationship instability that came with that. And I see this now, that my beloved was reflecting this losing of touch with myself back to me, and it resulted in quite a lot of volatility and a difficult situation that just got worse over time when COVID appeared. So the pandemic happened and it created an outer world. So first my inner world was unstable and I was lost. And then my home life became that way. And then the outer world, the entire world, became completely destabilized. It was turned upside down. And the world was going through historical transition. And it caused each and every one of us stress and uncertainty, which weighed on me, of course. It was a really difficult time. And I dealt with the pandemic part pretty well, considering what else was going on for me. That wasn't actually what I was scared of. It wasn't triggering fear and distrust in people in me. Everything was much more about my inner world at that time. At an etheric level, so let's move to that next layer, my blueprint includes, obviously, the genetic and ancestral imprint of thyroid dysfunction. And this was proven to me because my mum was diagnosed with thyroid disease not long after I was. So it's very clear that that was in my imprint and stored in my genetic line. So I held that genetic blueprint in my ethereal body already. And these potentials held in our blueprints lay dormant there, waiting to be activated if necessary. So my situation and my complete misalignment with my spiritual part triggered an activation of this potential in my blueprint. So I'm not going in the order that I read them out before of the actual bodies. This is the order that I noticed these patterns emerging, if that makes sense. So I think at that stage, while I wasn't aware of it consciously, the imprint was activated through my etheric body. The spirit activated it. And then I started noticing it in my mental health. So I'm totally out of alignment with my spiritual path, and I'm starting to drop into a negative mind state. I'm thinking very poorly about myself and my abilities, my potential. I started to engage in really negative self-talk, which wasn't normal for me. I started to fall into a deep depression, and I became completely lost in my inner world and did not know how to function in the outer world at that time. I didn't know how to look after myself well. I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to interact with others. And it was very convenient that lockdown was happening at that time because I didn't have to. In the outer world, I am being stimulated mentally by politics and conspiracy and psyops. So all my mental attention is focused on this because otherwise I have to think about what's happening inside, right? And when we are focused on politics and conspiracy and psyops, and that's all we think about and all we care about, we close off our creativity. There is a distinct lack of energetic flow of creation when that's what we care about the most. So I've blocked off my energy flow. I'm not creating anything. I'm also, by focusing on all this negative news crap, constantly victimizing myself without really knowing, but that's what I was doing, and that's what I think everyone does who's completely focused on politics and conspiracy and psyops. There's a constant victimization loop that happens. It's running in the programs in the mental field. And it gets worse the more you focus your attention on it. So the way I see it now, looking back, there was zero empowerment in my field at that time. And not only that, but I'm receiving this constant flow because we know what happened when the pandemic hit. We went from a news cycle of being daily to a news cycle being not even hourly. Things were being updated. We would have an opportunity to check the news and get a completely different list of stories every half an hour, right? It was just this constant flow of information and none of it was positive. So I'm also receiving this constant flow of negative projections from the outside world that's specifically targeting my and everyone else's mental energy fields for the purpose of impacting the other, for penetrating through to the other energy fields, as I discussed earlier. So I want to say at this point, when I'm starting to notice my thought processes, I had the power to witness my thoughts and sit with them and analyze them and think about it and make some change. But I lacked awareness at that time of that process and the power of that process. And I actually thought I was empowering myself by being informed by the news and being angry at the power structure and thinking that I could change the politics while reinforcing my own disempowerment. That's really what I was doing, because if I'm relying on systems of power to change the reality, I'm not believing I can change my own reality, right? I'm definitely going to do a whole other episode on that, but I'll leave that there. And then my home situation again was mirroring this disempowerment, which I think was very common for lots of couples during COVID. Okay, so then the etheric imprint goes into action again, and this triggers emotional crisis. So it triggers a manifestation of this reality in my emotional energy body, which is framed by the thyroid imprint. So a common symptom of thyroid dysfunction and thyroid disease is that it becomes difficult to regulate the emotions. So I start experiencing really crazy mood swings, almost feeling bipolar in going from despair to rage, experiences or emotions that I'd never experienced before. And this is a fairly vulnerable share because, you know, I'm such a generally like happy spirited person, and I'm quite calm now, although I wasn't always. It feels weird to say that publicly, but I want to be open about this because this is part of my healing journey. So in reality, my spirit is sending me on a journey through the full spectrum of emotion, down to the dark night to trigger my ultimate awakening. It's an initiation at this point. So I go through the dark night of the soul, but I still don't get it. I don't get the message that my body's trying to send me, my spirit's trying to send me. I'm not aware that I'm suffering from a physical illness yet, even though the symptoms are starting to add up. So I'm dealing with these emotional issues, and then I start to notice my physical issues finally. So this is probably, I reckon they were with me for a good 3 years before I actually took action on them and went to the doctor to get some tests. But I really hadn't been paying them the right kind of attention. There wasn't a conscious awareness of my physical body at that time. It was just something to groom and like cart around to get drinks and stuff like that. But I had a bunch of symptoms starting to add up. I was losing my hair. I had a lump in my throat that was always there, which made it hard to swallow my food that started to get worse. I was obviously regularly upset and distraught and crying. So the lump was physical, but it was also symbolic because it was a literal symbol of my state of being at that time. Because when you have a lump in your throat, it's what we say or what we notice when we're about to cry. So I always felt like I was going to cry, and my normal state of being didn't feel different to feeling like I was about to cry because that lump in my throat was always present. It was such a strange sensation. I was exhausted and fatigued. Extremely fatigued by the end of it. I was unable to function normally physically or mentally, obviously emotionally as well, but I started to know that physically I couldn't do normal tasks during the day. I remember very shortly before sending myself to the doctor, it was Christmas time and I was falling asleep at the table during Christmas lunch. So I was emotionally exhausted from all of the dysregulation, in the emotional dysregulation, but it was also physical exhaustion. So not having the energy to do the things that I needed to do during the day meant that when I did them, I was just adding to my fatigue debt, and it just became more and more difficult to function normally. My heart was also constantly racing. I couldn't regulate my temperature. My hands would shake. There was just like lots and lots and lots of symptoms adding up. And each and every symptom held a specific message for me that I've started to be able to decode now. And I'm going to go through how I interpreted these messages that were sent through these symptoms, because this is the process. This is the embodiment. This is leaning into the intelligence of my body to understand what my soul, my spirit's trying to tell me. So let's start with my hair loss, because I started there. This had such a huge impact on my self-acceptance, on my self-love. It was really hard to come to terms with. It was something that I didn't want to see and something that I pretended wasn't happening for a while. I couldn't talk about it. I was so self-conscious. I was terrified, actually, that the problem would get worse. And now I can see this as a challenge to love myself no matter what and see my beauty beyond physical standards. It was like I was sent aging symptoms prematurely almost, because I don't know, people have always told me that I've seemed young, whether that's looks or spirit, it's all kind of linked together. So that had been part of my identity, this youthfulness, but all of a sudden my appearance is drastically changing to look much older than I'm used to seeing myself, and it was shocking to me. And so the challenge here that I see now that my spirit was sending was the challenge to accept myself as I'm going through the process of evolution, evolving into what I am to become. I am to become the wise crone. That is my future. Why not see that now? What am I afraid of? She looks different to my maiden self and even my mother phase self. And so perhaps I was in denial about that part, and perhaps my spirit sent me the message of the hair loss to challenge me to accept my own transition into the next phase, into my next era, with this physical confrontation of rapid aging. I was confronted with the crone arriving early, and it took me some pretty big work to deal with that. And I'm super happy with that now. I'm excited, bring her on, but not before her time. You know, I'm here to honor the divine timing. And that is something, as I reflected on earlier, that I believe we're taught, especially women, to avoid. That the impending death, which is symbolized by aging, we're told to avoid that. And so I'm not into avoiding it anymore. I will still play with makeup. I still want to look beautiful. I'll still dye my hair because it's fun, but I'm not going to feel bad about myself getting older. I'm not going to feel bad. It's okay to feel different about it and to kind of explore your feelings, but I don't want to feel bad about something that's inevitable. Why avoid it when I can embrace it and step into my power, right? The lump in my throat. This was clearly about repression. So when people talk about thyroid issues from an energetic sense, it's always linked to the throat chakra. And what I was experiencing physically, what had manifested physically, was an enlarged thyroid gland, which felt like to me a big lump in my throat, which was a physical block of energetic flow. Energy from my heart chakra that wanted to flow upward to my third eye and to my crown and beyond was being blocked at throat level. The throat chakra governs expression, and here I was experiencing a literal enlargement, a literal blockage of this energy pathway, the pathway of expression of authenticity, and it needed healing. So in my journey, I understand this lump to be a signal or a message about me repressing my truth, swallowing my words, holding my voice, not speaking my truth. And this was my spirit sending me a physical message to help me understand what needed to be worked through to live in an authentic way and to speak my truth without fear. That was my ultimate challenge for the entirety of the thyroid illness. And I can literally use this lump flaring up and the other symptoms flaring up too, but especially the lump, in how authentically I'm using my voice in speaking my truth. And if there's a flare up and I feel the lump present, because after lots of work, the lump went away and I didn't feel it for a good year, I would say. When it pops back up, I have work to do around using my voice. I have work to do around authentic self-expression. I have work to do around stepping into my power. And so this challenge was to help me understand what it takes to live in an authentic way and to speak my truth without fear, to face the fear and speak it anyway. And so much of my healing journey was about that last year, in stepping into this new role of mystic, of guide, of working with energetic medicine and speaking about it, with making this podcast and casting my energetic net out to reach others and allow my truth to resonate with them, to be held by them, allow myself that vulnerability and face that fear and transcend it. But like I said earlier, these symptoms need to be managed ongoing because healing is ongoing. And so now I know partly what this message is through this symptom, and this might evolve. So that's why this conscious awareness is so important, because through that symptom, my body might want to send me a new or slightly different message, and I need to be working with my body and actively listening my body to interpret the message correctly. My physical exhaustion was all about my capacity to act on my will, I believe. So at that point, I lacked the fire. I was inspired somewhat to do things. I didn't want to be listless. I didn't want to be apathetic. I didn't want to be bored or boring. I really have always loved creating. But at that point, I'd given so much of my creative energy, of my fire, to people outside of myself, to businesses that I'd consult with and help grow their business, realize their dreams. I was giving all of that vital energy to others, and I'd used up my stores. So even if and when I was inspired to make something happen, I lacked the capacity to act on my will because I lacked that fire energy, and it had manifested in physical exhaustion and burnout. So I actually needed to work on my energy stores. I needed to restore my own fire. I needed to heal by resetting myself on a physical level, and also on a mental level by resetting my expectations, reset my goals, reset my perceptions about my value and what I'm here to offer and the work I'm here to do and how much money I need to be able to live and all those things. And I'd burnt out my energy stores as well by following a path that didn't really serve me. That was part of what led me out of alignment. So I needed to create space without any expectations to allow my body to rebuild its energy stores. I also had to redesign what was important in my life so that I could direct my energy in alignment with where my spirit wanted to lead me. This is something that I'm still, I want to say, struggling with, because I got into a space of such comfort in living in this spacious awareness with limited responsibilities and limited expectations, and just accepting the present and accepting reality as it is, that it can get so comfortable that you don't need to take much action. And I talked about this last week, that what's stopping me now is self-belief, and that I have to believe that I have the energy to take action. I have to believe now, I have to build those belief stores to support the rebuilt energy stores. There's also a really important factor here physically as well, that lots of the mental reprogramming was to do with conscious consumption, which is a topic I'm going to devote a whole episode to. I was not consuming consciously up to that point. I'd started comfort eating. I didn't have any problem with eating really processed foods. I still loved making my own food. I was still vegetarian, but I was eating a lot of processed sugar, and I don't necessarily think these things are bad unless you're dealing with spiritual issues and it impacts your body in a really negative way. And so it definitely did with me, created a lot of inflammation, and understanding that I could adopt an anti-inflammatory diet was a key for healing for me. When I was given that information and that would have a positive impact on my thyroid dysfunction, I embraced that and took that on board, and no longer was living in an ignorant or unconscious way. I was actively participating in my own nutrition, nurturing myself with my food. So on a physical layer, that was happening, but it was really mental for me. I had to use a lot of mental strength to be able to change my habits, for instance, around food and eating, and get organized with the energy that I had to do things like food prep once a week, because I knew I had to project ahead and knew that one of the challenges was having to cook 3 times a day. I just didn't have the energy for it. But if I could cultivate enough energy to cook once on a Sunday and have enough food for the week, maybe that would be okay. And maybe I could focus my energy elsewhere that would help build up my stores again. So it's multi-layered here, right? And you have to look out for those angels on your path as well. Someone giving you a key of wisdom that helps you make change. You have to be open to receiving those keys and turning the key and unlocking the next phase, the advancement, yourself. A few more of those symptoms. I'll try to cover these quickly. So the heart racing to me represents that constant pushing to do, that constant pushing to create for others in a way that didn't honor my own heart's desires. If I had the luxury of choosing how I spent my time and my creative energy, it wouldn't have been that if I didn't need the money. So I was obviously dishonoring my own heart's desires. And we all have to do this in our lives. We have to make money. We have responsibilities. We need to be able to live in a house, that we have to pay for. We need to buy food to eat, all of those things. But there's still ways to honor our heart's desires, even when we have to go to a job we don't necessarily care about. Another thing that I was doing, in addition to like not following my own heart and using my vital force to honor other people's heart's desires, was abusing coffee. So I'd use this physical substance to help keep my focus. Without it, I'd get tired and bored. My attention would wane. And that's probably because it was supposed to, because I wasn't interested in this anymore. It wasn't serving me. But I'd use coffee, and we're taught to do this. We are taught to abuse coffee so that we turn off those messages from our body. And what I came to, I cut the coffee because my heart needed space to calm itself and recalibrate without this outside interference of this substance. And it was also important for me just to allow my heart to speak to me and for me to listen and feel what it wanted me to feel. So that's the way, by consciously cutting that coffee and only drinking non-caffeinated drinks for a long period, I was able to create space around my heart for it to be, instead of forcing it to pump at a crazy fast rate. This is another thing. Taking responsibility for what you create is such an important part of this process as well, of transformational healing. So I was taking responsibility. How can I complain about this symptom if I'm creating it or making it worse by drinking coffee when I know that makes my heart race? And anyone who talks about coffee being the love of their life really needs to think about this. You may not be honoring your heart here. It's a spiritual issue, I think, but I'll save that for another episode. The regulation of temperature was probably to do with the imbalance of energy, of polarized energy, because I was swinging between hot and cold. More often I felt really cold and I desperately wanted to feel warm. So I was lacking light. I was lacking that beautiful, warm, life-giving source light, because I was in this dark, depressed state. Makes sense. I was going through a dark night, right? But I think there was also an imbalance of other poles, yin and yang, masculine and feminine, all of these things, and an inability to sit within the center. I was at that time choosing the extreme of polarity rather than just witnessing in the middle path. I still feel comfort carrying a hot water bottle around at any temperature under 20 degrees, honestly. This is something I still need to work on balancing, I think. So I've gone into a fair amount of detail there, but I'm sharing this with you to show you, or to explain to you, how much you can learn about yourself, the detail you can learn about yourself and your reality when you witness your own body, when you sit in observance, when you consciously, intentionally listen to the signals it's sending you. And there is so much wisdom held within the communication of the body through symptoms. This is ultimately why the medical system uses symptoms to diagnose. They're just only dealing with one energy body. That's the problem. And so there's no harm in that. I think it's a really empowered way of looking at the medical system. There's a level of healing you can do at the physical level that is facilitated by the allopathic system. It also can help you deal with mental issues, potentially emotional issues, but very often they like to diagnose you with things and medicate you, which I don't think deals with the spiritual source at all. So there's just so much wisdom here to unpack. And after I kind of jotted down my notes for this episode, it dawned on me that this is transformational healing. Transformational healing is a term that I was given in the Akashic Records to describe what I'm here to share with people. I don't see myself as a healer. Even though I make energy medicines, I don't see myself as a healer. I don't think that's my sacred work. I see myself more as a guide, a communicator, maybe even a paradigm breaker for people. That seems a bit extreme, but I'm here to facilitate other people's paradigm shifts. That sounds a bit more accurate. I feel like that's my message. And transformational healing is something that I'm explaining right now. I didn't understand what that meant. The records talk to me about this mode of healing that I'm here to share with people, that sounded similar to quantum healing, but quantum was too specific and perhaps even limiting. Not that a quantum encompasses everything. It's more about the literal meaning of it, or the attachment to the meaning of that word, that some people find it a bit too scientific and therefore might think it's not for them or something that they can do. It's a bit beyond, but it's not at all. And I think that's why the records said to me, no, it's transformational healing. They're essentially the same thing, but transformational healing is more accessible. And that's why we're sharing that name with you. And I've been workshopping this for like a year and a half, I think. What can this be? What modality could it be? Is it sound healing? Is it color healing? Is it pyramid therapy? Is it all sorts of things? I've been exploring them all. And is it energetic medicine? Is it all of these things together? Is it a mashup of some of them? And I just haven't understood until now. It's really decoding the communication of symbols through symptoms in the body. That is transformational healing. And it's transformational because it's a transformational mode of understanding what healing is. Because I don't know that many people are talking about it in this way, perhaps, but it's also transformational because through going through this process, it transforms you. So not only does the healing transform you, but going through the process of trying to decode the symbolic messages that your body's sending you is a form of communicating with your body, and your body is working with your spirit to help you transform, to help your soul transform, to help your human incarnation, like your humanness, transform. Healing is a lifelong journey. Healing is embodiment. Healing is awareness. Healing is conscious intention. Healing as a process of communicating with the body. Two-way communication. Transformational healing is accepting the responsibility of being your own healer. Accepting the fact that you are able to heal yourself, that only you can heal yourself truly. It's learning about alchemy through observing and witnessing and participating actively in the functions of your body. It's understanding physical health and illness and symptoms as a communication tool of the spirit. So this is a lot, but I don't think I'm going to chop up this episode because I think you have to hear it all in one go. I'm so grateful if you stuck around for the entire episode. I would love to hear your response to this. Is it something you already work with? Is it something that you've had a yearning to do but you haven't understood how or why yet? Is this concept completely new to you, this process of listening and decoding? Is it completely new to you? Has it triggered consideration in your own current or past state around your health? I'm so curious to hear how this is received, and please converse with me. Please share with me. Hit me up on Instagram, send me a DM, send me an email, or join the Telegram group. This is what we're here to do in the Telegram group, is to unpack all manner of spiritual concepts, but also these evolutions of our own wisdom, of our own gifts. We're all here to share that with each other. I'm not going to gatekeep this. I'm going to share it, and I want you guys to do that too. Not everyone has the platform of a podcast, so that's why I've created the Telegram group, because as I said previously, if you vibe with me, you're going to vibe with others who vibe with me. So come and join us and talk about it. I'll put the Telegram link into the show notes. It's really easy to join Telegram. Even if you're not in any Telegram groups yet, you've never used it before, just download the app and click the link in the bio, and it should just send you to the group. It's a public group. This is a group where there's free conversation. Some groups limit that and only broadcast messages. This is full conversation. You can talk about whatever you wish as long as you're not causing harm to others. But I want this to be a place where we can challenge our perceptions of what is real and what is true, and evolve our understanding and evolve our wisdom. So if this sounds like something you want to be a part of, if you're deeply desiring to connect with others on the spiritual path, come and join us. We'd love to welcome you and hold you in the space. There's some beautiful souls in there. We've been spending time this week doing introductions and getting to know each other, sharing who we are and what our passions are, and it's been so beautiful. There are a number of people in the group who are already familiar with each other, but I think I speak for all of us when I say we've all learned something new about each other as we've gone through the process of introduction or reintroduction. So I would love to welcome you to the Telegram group, and it's completely free. So come join the community, check the show notes, and come join us. I'm so excited to share more episodes coming up about health, about empowered health, about transformational healing, about energetic medicine. There's so much to talk about, and it's not all about illness. Healing is not all about illness. So this isn't just for you if you are suffering from illness. It's also not for you if you're like a health nut. This is for everyone. This is wisdom for everyone. It's wisdom we all need to hear and embody and share with others right now. So that's one other thing I want to request from you. If this episode held meaning for you, share it. Share it with someone who you think would be open to hearing it. Okay, I've talked for long enough, really working out that throat chakra, aren't I? Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I'm really honored to have you present with me. I'm honored that you share your attention with me. I hold so much reverence for that attention and energy that you're sharing. And I wish you peace, I wish you love, and I wish you happiness for the week ahead. I'll see you next week.